Welcome everybody, Father Chris here with our Dr. Karen Hamad from Church of the Redeemer, who's been doing a whole bunch of frontline work with the coronavirus and healthcare and all those sorts of things. Karen's going to tell us a little bit about that in a minute. And we're here to talk about the coronavirus vaccine. Karen did a wonderful live Facebook special for us on talking us through the pandemic kind of in the early times and what it looks like. And everything she said has come true, I think, from that video about the spikes and the ease and all these different things that have happened. So Karen, tell us a little bit about what you've been up to.
So hi everybody, it's nice to be back. I really miss going to church and seeing all of you in person. So yeah, it's been a busy, 9 months. I can't believe we're rounding the corner towards a year now. Besides seeing patients in my office, I have been asked to lead Sarasota Memorial Hospital's COVID treatment task force. We formed that in the early days of the pandemic. And what we've been doing is meeting weekly with epidemiologists, infectious disease doctors, pulmonary critical care doctors who run the ICU, ER, hospitalists, etc., and our residents. We've been reviewing the literature that comes out almost daily on the coronavirus, on treatments, vaccines, safety, protocols, etc., and we've been crafting and implementing the Sarasota Memorial Hospital COVID treatment order set and protocols in real time. And so I've been very involved with the coronavirus response here in Sarasota.
How's the vaccine rollout going so far in Sarasota?
So unfortunately, the vaccine rollout in Sarasota has been disappointing. The hospital, Sarasota Memorial Hospital, was able to procure a significant amount of vaccine when the first shipment of Moderna came around, and they have been successful in distributing that vaccine completely, all that they've gotten. I believe the last few doses of it are actually going to the Newtown community tomorrow. But that being said, from what I understand, the Sarasota County Health Department has only received about 5,000 doses so far, and that's why it's so frustrating every time you all get on the website to try to get an appointment. You know, they're doing 500 appointments at a time, and they're gone in minutes, and you know, we have not had a very adequate rollout so far, at least in Sarasota County. I do know that Manatee County has been more successful than we have been in procuring vaccine, and so from what I understand, their health department is giving vaccinations to anyone who wants, even if you don't live in Manatee County. So if you're frustrated and you really want the vaccine, and I urge you to want it, you can go on the Manatee County Health Department website, I believe, and get an appointment that way. I do know people who've been successful doing that.
Thank you. Now I've done my research, and I've searched all sorts of YouTube channels and Google, you know, all the places you go to get the best information. Yes. Where only the truth can be found. My
favorite patients talk to me about Dr. Google.
And I've got a whole bunch of questions that really aren't for me, but I found them and I didn't know the answer to them, so I thought I'd ask you and see what you have to say, and then after these questions we'll wrap up with maybe a couple more things and then we'll be done.
Okay, great.
All right, so the first question I have: what should I expect after I get the vaccine, and will the second dose give me worse side effects than the first? That's something I have actually personally heard people say.
Sure.
The second's going to be worse, and I don't know if it's true.
Okay, so that's a great question. And I can speak personally because I've been very fortunate, and I was one of the first doctors at Sarasota Memorial Hospital to actually get the vaccine. I think, one, to show my residents that it wasn't as scary as everyone was saying, and to encourage everyone in my departments to go ahead and get the vaccine. But I did receive the vaccine, and so did my husband, John Yanari. My arm was sore that evening and was sore the next day. Getting the vaccine did not get me out of making dinner that night. And I was really hoping for a night on the couch. After I made dinner and fed everybody and did the dishes, I laid down and John said, "Oh, you look a little pale." And I said, "Really? But you didn't offer to do dinner." So I obviously didn't look that pale, and I woke up in the morning and I was fine. And I didn't have any fever, chills, or anything. I went to work the next day. My arm was a little bit sore, but nothing to speak of. Now, that being said, I have been told that the second dose has a little bit more of a response, and you want that because that means your body mounted enough of an antibody response with the first dose, so the second dose is acting like a booster. If any of you have had your shingles vaccine, the Shingrix, you know that the second dose gives you a little bit more of a response than the first dose. From what I understand, this is similar to that. I am due for my second dose next week, and I actually did take the following day off of work in anticipation of maybe having a low-grade fever, having some chills, and just not feeling up to working. So that's my plan, and that's the best answer I can give you. I don't know anybody yet who's had their second dose at Sarasota Memorial because we're only 2.5 weeks into giving the vaccine, so that's my best answer.
All right. This is not me speaking. I am super healthy, so I won't ever get the vaccine because COVID can't hurt me anyway.
So I wish that were true. At the risk of crying, we have lost a lot of really healthy patients. And so the problem with this virus is that although for a lot of people it won't be a big deal, it is incredibly random. And we really don't know who is going to have a bad outcome or not. We can guess. We can say, oh, you're more likely or less likely. But again, I had an 82-year-old man who got admitted to the hospital. He has a heart condition. And I saw him yesterday, and he's doing great. And he said, you can't kill an Italian old man. But, you know, then again, young people are getting deathly ill, and 40-year-olds are dying in the ICUs. And so I wouldn't bank on your health. I would bank on the vaccine.
Next one. I have already had COVID. Why should I also get the vaccine?
So a couple reasons for that. A very dear friend of mine had COVID before Thanksgiving, and she was really sick for 10 days, 12 days, lost her sense of taste and smell, had facial numbness, had chest tightness, nausea, diarrhea. She was pretty sick. And so a week after she was recovered, she went to get her antibodies checked so she could donate plasma, and she had no antibodies, and she felt gypped. She said to me, I had the disease, I deserve those antibodies. And she didn't have any antibodies. And I can promise you she had true COVID. She had a positive PCR, and she was sick. So number one, you don't really know if you're immune or what that immunity means with those antibodies. And they also don't last very long from what they've noticed, about 2 to 3 months for native coronavirus antibodies. And there are many documented cases now of people getting COVID a second time. And if they did well the first time, that's not necessarily a guarantee you're going to do well the second time.
Okay. I've actually had someone say this one to me, but I've also read it online. This is a crazy one.
Buckle up.
Bill Gates put tiny nanocomputers into the vaccine, and the government elites will use them to mind control me and to track me.
Well, after this past week in our country, I would probably believe anything but that. So, I don't know what to tell you about little nano men. There's nothing in that vaccine other than the mRNA needed for you to create your own antibodies against COVID-19.
All right, and that brings us to our next question. Can you explain the difference between a typical vaccine and the mRNA vaccine?
Sure. So the mRNA vaccine, mRNA stands for messenger RNA, and that harkens you back to your 8th grade biology class, and we're all having nightmares and thinking of that double helix. But in short order, what I mean is that the messenger RNA is not a live virus. There's nothing in the vaccine that can give you COVID. What it does is it is a little message that goes away after time, kind of like a Post-it note that you rip up or like a Snapchat picture, for those of you who are that savvy. So you get the vaccine, you're giving yourself in your body a little message on how to create the spike protein in the coronavirus, your own version of it, which then your body recognizes as foreign, which then triggers your own antibodies to form against the spike protein. And then that messenger RNA dissolves and goes away. After 6 to 8 weeks, it's no longer in your system, but your body has created the spike protein and then the antibodies around it, so that up to 2 years, you are supposed to be now immune to the live, real coronavirus spike protein, which is what makes you sick.
And This is a side question of that. So that spike protein, it's kind of, the messenger RNA kind of works similar in the way a virus does, where a virus, that spike protein attaches to your body and your body's producing the virus itself.
Your body's producing antibodies to the virus itself.
But when you get infected with the coronavirus,
yes,
with COVID-19,
yes,
the way a virus
the
spreads
virus
in
is
your body,
replicating.
it's replicating
in your body,
using you to replicate itself.
Yes.
And so that spike protein, the mRNA, kind of does that a little bit so that your body knows what to look for and how to deal with it.
Exactly.
Cool. All right. Because it's an mRNA vaccine, does it change us on a molecular or in a DNA level?
Sure, and that's a fair question, but the answer is no. Again, it's like a Post-it note. It gives a temporary message. Your body then creates the spike protein itself, made of you, but it looks foreign to you, and then you create the antibodies around it. But it's not changing your genetic code or your DNA at all.
So my dream of becoming an X-Men is never going to happen.
The Hulk.
That's not going to happen with this
Not
vaccine.
with the coronavirus vaccine, unfortunately.
Oh well, I'll have to stick to the gamma rays. Mm-hmm. Okay. Can I still get and or spread COVID once I've been fully vaccinated?
Sure. So I think the final answer on that is still out. There are various vaccines. 2 have been approved already, one by Pfizer, one by Moderna, and I understand there's a 1-dose vaccine coming out by Johnson & Johnson, which has not yet been approved. So from what I understand, the Pfizer vaccine, and both are great vaccines, and if you can get either vaccine, get it. One is not better than the other, but from what I understand, the Pfizer vaccine, you are still actually able to get sick and possibly transmit virus. You're just not going to be ill. Mm-hmm. So you may get infected, but you may not, you won't show symptoms. So you could still infect grandma to a much lesser degree, but there's still the possibility. The studies have shown with the Moderna vaccine that actually the risks of that are much less. And so with the Moderna vaccine, they're saying you will not get infected and will not be transmissible to others, at least to the degree with the Pfizer vaccine. And if I am misspeaking, I apologize, but that is how I understand the difference between those 2 vaccines. The main reason to get the vaccine is so that you don't get deathly ill, just like from the flu vaccine. When you take the influenza vaccine, you can still get influenza, but you're protected from getting deathly ill from it or dying. Same with coronavirus. And then by everybody getting the vaccine, then we're all protected. Not being able to transmit the virus is kind of a bonus.
Got it. These vaccines were made extremely fast.
Sure.
How can we be sure they're safe, especially since the mRNA is kind of a new technology?
Yep. Okay. So I think that this is the first time a vaccine has become sexy. And so I think that's why this happened so fast, right? Because the whole world's dying and people are pouring money into these vaccines left and right. And the vaccine companies knew that the government was going to be pouring money into their research, and that's what stoked them to go this fast, because capitalism rules the world, right? And up till now, a flu vaccine really wasn't that sexy, because I can't convince anyone to get the flu vaccine these days, and no company was going to go working their brains out to get a flu vaccine. So I think that is what sped up the process and helped speed up the process. Now, that being said, any vaccine trial, their safety duration is 6 weeks post the last arms vaccination. Okay, so you try for a HIV vaccine and you give vaccinations from date A to date D, and then you can't report any results until 6 weeks after your last vaccine. For these vaccines, the FDA, knowing that the public was going to be a little suspicious given the rapidity with which the vaccines were created, they actually extended that safety period to 8 weeks. And so the vaccine companies were not able to report their safety data or their data at all until a full 8 weeks after the vaccine was given to the last patient. And as we were saying, that mRNA message is like a Snapchat or a Post-it note that gets ripped up. It doesn't last more than 6 weeks in your body. So there are no post 6 week side effects to worry about. And everyone says to me, how do we know about the long-term effects? What do we know? There are no long-term effects because the actual vaccine is out of your system by 6 weeks. And they monitored this for 8 weeks, actually, both of them. So they had longer, these two vaccines had longer safety trials than all the other vaccines out there.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. I've heard someone say, we will never be able to achieve herd immunity. It's going to be impossible to do it.
Well, I think, unfortunately, with the rapidity with which this is spreading, we're going to reach herd immunity, and we're going to have hundreds and hundreds more thousands of people dead on our way there. And the vaccine can only help us in a positive way. And if we can vaccinate 65-70% of the population, then we're on a good path to do that. You don't want to just let 3,000, 4,000 people die a day in this country. I'm going to give you an example, and a patient said this to me the other day. When a jumbo jet goes down, we lose 350 to 400 passengers. And just think about the last time a jumbo jet went down and how you watched the news and cried and felt so bad for those families rushing to the airport, waiting for news about their loved ones. Then you multiply that by 10, and we do it every day. And we need to get this vaccine. It's our only way out of this.
Last one. Natural immunity and our own immune system is far better than any vaccine that you could ever have.
So, I'm not going to argue with that. I am going to say that it's unclear with this virus how long natural immunity lasts. And also, again, we spoke about how random this lethal strain is. And so that's a pretty big gamble. That's everyone playing Russian roulette, assuming that if we get it, we're going to survive it. If we get it, we're not going to pass it on to anybody else who won't survive it. If we get it, we're not going to have long-term effects. And I have a couple patients who now, after 6 months, are actually considered long haulers, and none of them are over 50. And none of them have other medical problems. Because our own natural immune system gets so ramped up by this virus because it's so foreign. So I was talking to some nurses today who were a little reluctant, and there's a lot of medical professionals who are reluctant. And so we've been trying to do a lot of education, and that's why I called you, Father Chris, to see if I could help if there was anybody in the community who wanted to ask these questions. The human race has actually never seen this virus before, this strain of virus. And so it's hard for people to understand, why is this so rampant? It is literally because we have never seen this strain of virus before. So I tell people, how when the native Indians were here and then the British came and they wiped them out with a cold. Okay, well, a cold is a coronavirus. So here we are. Okay, we've just never seen this one kind before. And so we really can't count on our natural immunity, because I can't promise you that you'll live long enough to get a natural immunity.
Wow.
Grim. I'm sorry to be grim.
That's where we are right now.
Yeah.
And
there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and we really are working. So if you get an opportunity to get that vaccine, go get it, because it's very safe. My mom took it. You all know Renee Hamad. My mom took it. We're trying to get people to get it. So
I've got one more question. I don't know if you could answer. I just thought of it. If there's a delay in getting your second dose, how does that affect? I mean, they say you get, I think, your first dose in 4 weeks, you get your second dose?
Yeah, for Moderna. For Pfizer, it's 21 days. For Moderna, it's 28 days.
Okay.
So supposedly, 2 weeks after my first dose, I'm 84% immune. So right now, I'm 84% immune. And 2 weeks after my second dose, I'm 95% immune. That's a good question about the delay. I'll have to get back to you on that. I think there's probably a window.
Yeah, that's what, yeah.
But
ideally, you get it here, but...
Well, and ideally, I'm still 84% if I never get my second dose. And there are, I know Britain is thinking about not giving the second dose and using all their vaccine to first dose everybody and then give a booster in 6 months. We don't have studies for that. And we do like, in science, to follow the studies. That's why I'm so comfortable talking to you all about this tonight, is because I do believe in the science and I have read the studies. and I do believe that the studies are valid, and so that's why I'm confident about that. When you start to fudge things and move them around without the studies, then you're kind of, heading toward those little green men. So
Yeah.
we have to follow the science.
Yeah, I mean, just to what you said, I had a good friend who had some of the the comorbidities, I guess they
Yes.
call them, or health
Yes.
problems, and he got COVID in New York and was fine.
Yeah.
Another friend in New York who was relatively healthy, who got COVID and had he wasn't deathly ill, he wasn't in the hospital, but it was very uncomfortable, and he was kind of like, your chance of dying is not that good, so I'm not really worried about it. But then he said, after being sick for 2 weeks, I really prefer not having it.
Right. And I will tell you all that I get calls from big, strong firemen in their 40s at 10 o'clock at night when they're starting to be afraid. And for something about this virus that actually makes you afraid. You're sitting alone in your room, you're isolated, you're hearing all these stories, you can't turn anything on the news except see these numbers of people dying, and you start to get chest tightness, and you start to get short of breath, and you start thinking, okay, am I crazy? Is it the virus? Is it a blood clot? Is it a pneumonia? What is it? And it starts to mess with your head. And my friend who had it said it's the most insidious illness she's ever had. She felt like she could feel it trying to get her in different ways. And there's a nice way to prevent getting this. One is wearing your mask, and the second is getting a vaccine. So I think that's what we should really all aim for.
Yeah, I'm planning on getting a vaccine as soon as I can. So if anyone out there has a vaccine and you want to give it to me, give me a call.
Chris Wood, he's up for it.
I'm up for it. So
Yes.
I hope everyone who gets a chance to get the vaccine when it's available to them will get it, and I hope the rollout starts getting a little bit better. In the
Yes,
near
we are
future.
hoping to do a much bigger vaccination plan in the next few weeks, more to come. We just have to be able to procure the vaccine. So
Wonderful. Well,
Yeah.
Karen, you are a treasure at Redeemer,
Oh, gosh,
and we
thank
are
you.
very thankful for you as my family's personal physician, and also as a good friend and a wonderful parishioner. And we thank you for taking some time tonight to
course,
give us
of
some
course.
information.
And you know what? The sooner we get the vaccine, we can have Easter
Amen.
in person. Come on,
Get the vaccine.
get the vaccine.
We
Because
can
I missed
receive-
Christmas. I
we can
really
receive
did.
from the cup again.
Can you imagine? Yeah.
Can't wait.
First Christmas of my whole life that I wasn't in church. That was really hard.
It's the first Christmas of my whole life that I celebrated 8 masses in 2 days.
Thanks to the camera. Oh my goodness gracious.
All right. Well, God bless you, everybody,
All right.
and
Thank
you
all
for
much love.
being here. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.